Elijah was 44 years old, a structural engineer with a salary of $78,000 a year. And at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, his world quietly ended on the kitchen counter of his Germantown row house. He had come downstairs for a glass of water, his bare feet silent on the worn, 100-year-old pine floors. The house, which they'd bought for a modest $210,000 12 years ago, was his sanctuary, a fortress of brick and mortar he understood down to its bones. He knew the groan of the third step, the precise spot on the living room window that fogged up when it rained, the way the morning light hit the backsplash he and his wife, Renata, had installed one sweltering July weekend. He saw the glow before he saw the source. A pale blue rectangle of light painting the darkened kitchen. It was Renata's laptop, a sleek $2,100 MacBook Pro she used for her work as a junior partner at a prestigious Center City law firm. She must have forgotten to close it. He moved toward it, his hand reaching for the lid. A simple act of tidiness before heading back to bed. But then his eyes caught the screen. It wasn't a legal brief or her email. It was a banking portal, and the numbers on the screen made the air in his lungs turn to ice. One open browser tab. That's all it took. The name at the top wasn't their shared savings account at PNC Bank, the one they painstakingly fed with a few $100s each month. The logo was for a private wealth management firm he'd never heard of. The account name read R Ventures Global, LLC. And the balance, displayed in a bold, unforgiving font, was $334,781.22. For a full minute, Elijah didn't breathe. He was a man who understood stress loads and shear walls, the physics of how things collapse. He could feel the load-bearing columns of his own life beginning to buckle. What was R Ventures Global? Where did that money come from? It was more than 4 times his annual salary, sitting in an account he never knew existed. His gaze drifted down the page, past the balance, to a list of recent transactions. A transfer of $50,000 dated 3 weeks ago. Another for $75,000 a month before that. The descriptions were vague. Asset liquidation. He recognized the source accounts. They were their joint investment funds. The college fund for their 9-year-old daughter, Cora. The retirement portfolio he'd been building since he was 25. She had been systematically draining them. Has your world ever been completely rewritten in a single moment? Share a time in the comments when a small discovery changed everything you thought you knew. His hand, holding the glass of water, began to tremble. Below the transactions was another section, a linked documents folder. His cursor, guided by a force he didn't recognize as his own, hovered and clicked. A file opened. It was a PDF, a retainer agreement with a name he recognized as one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in Philadelphia, a man whose services started at $1,200 an hour. The client name was Renata. The second file was a property prospectus for a penthouse condominium in Society Hill, a sleek glass tower overlooking the Delaware River. The price was $1.8 million. A down payment of $150,000 was marked as pending transfer from R Ventures Global. Elijah felt his knees go weak. He stumbled back from the counter and sank into one of the cheap wooden chairs at their $300 IKEA kitchen table. The glass of water slipped from his numb fingers, not shattering, but landing with a dull thud on the braided rug, spilling a perfect, dark circle onto the floor. He didn't notice. He just sat there, staring at the glowing screen. The hum of the old refrigerator, a sound that had been the backdrop to his life for a decade, suddenly sounded like a roaring engine. He sat for an hour, maybe longer, a statue carved from shock. The man who left for a glass of water was gone. In his place was a stranger, hollowed out and cold, staring at the digital blueprint of his wife's secret life, a life built with the pieces of his own. The first hint of dawn was beginning to soften the edges of the kitchen window when tiny footsteps padded down the stairs. Cora, his daughter, appeared in the doorway, her small frame swallowed by a pink unicorn onesie. Her hair, a beautiful explosion of tight coils, was adorned with a few brightly colored beads that clicked softly as she moved. She rubbed her eyes, her deep brown skin looking luminous, even in the dim light. She saw him at the table, still in his t-shirt and sleep pants, the spilled water now a large, dark stain on the rug. "Daddy?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. She walked over and leaned against his leg, her warmth a stark contrast to the ice in his veins. "Did you sleep?" The question was so simple, so innocent. It shattered the frozen stillness that had encased him. He looked down at her, at the absolute trust in her eyes, and a wave of something fierce and protective washed over the devastation. This was what mattered. This was the structure he had to keep from collapsing. He forced a smile, the muscles in his face feeling alien and stiff. "Hey, Sweet Pea. No, Daddy just had some work stuff on his mind. Couldn't sleep. You know how it is." He reached out and smoothed down a stray coil of her hair. "Are you hungry? I can make you some pancakes before school." "Pancakes!" she whisper-shouted, her sleepiness instantly vanishing. "Can I help? Can I put the chocolate chips in?" "You're the official chocolate chip expert," he said, his voice hoarse. He stood up, his joints aching as if he'd aged 20 years overnight. He gently closed the laptop, the soft click sounding like a cell door locking. He would not let this poison touch her. Not now, not ever. As he measured out flour and sugar into a bowl, his hands moving on autopilot, Cora chattered on about a dream she'd had involving a talking squirrel and a flying bicycle. He listened. He nodded. He smiled in all the right places. But inside, he was somewhere else entirely. He was replaying the numbers, the names, the sheer, calculated cruelty of it all. Renata, his wife of 15 years. The woman he'd held when her mother, her beloved mama, passed away. The woman whose law school tuition he'd helped pay for by taking on extra freelance projects, drafting blueprints, until his eyes burned. She had called him her rock, her foundation. It turned out he was just the foundation she planned to build her new life on, before dynamiting it on her way out. When Renata came downstairs an hour later at 7:15 a.m., she was the picture of polished success. She wore a deep blue Armani suit that cost $2,800, a suit she'd claimed she got at a consignment shop for a steal. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she smelled of a $300 perfume he'd bought her for their anniversary. She breezed into the kitchen, a whirlwind of purpose and ambition. "Morning, you two," she said, kissing Cora's forehead and giving Elijah a quick, distracted peck on the cheek. Her lips were cool. "Smells good. Eli, can you make me a coffee? I have a 9 a.m. with the senior partners. It's a big one." Elijah turned from the stove, a plate of pancakes in his hand. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the expensive suit, the confident smile, the complete absence of guilt in her eyes. She had no idea. He felt a strange calm settle over him. The shock was hardening into something else, something cold and methodical. He was a structural engineer. He knew how to assess damage, find the breaking points, and plan a controlled demolition. "Sure," he said, his voice even. "Cream and 2 sugars, right?" She smiled, already scrolling through emails on her phone. "You know it, you're the best." He had no idea how wrong he was. For the next 3 weeks, Elijah lived a double life. By day, he was the same dependable husband and father. He packed Cora's lunch every morning, a note tucked inside the baggie with her apple slices. He went to his job at the small engineering firm, analyzing load capacities for commercial buildings. his mind a quiet fortress of calculations. He fixed the dripping faucet under the kitchen sink with a $12 washer from Home Depot. He mowed the lawn. He played catch with Cora in their small, patchy backyard. But by night, after Renata and Cora were asleep, he transformed. He became the other man he was, the one Renata had always dismissed as a quirky hobby. Elijah was a licensed forensic analyst. He'd gotten the certification years ago, fascinated by the digital puzzles, the stories that data could tell. He mostly used it for side gigs, helping small businesses with data recovery or security audits, earning an extra $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Renata had called it his little nerd project. She had no idea she was about to become his magnum opus. The first night after the discovery, he sat in his small basement office, a cramped space with a cheap desk and a second-hand computer. He started with the LLC, R Ventures Global. A quick search of the state's corporate database showed it was registered 6 months prior. The registered agent was a generic service in Delaware, a dead end. But the filing documents listed a single managing member, Renata. The address she'd used was a P.O. box in Center City. He made a note. He then used a software tool to create a perfect, bit-by-bit image of the hard drive from her laptop while she slept. It was a risky move, but necessary. He couldn't risk her deleting anything. The process took 4 agonizing hours, the progress bar on his screen moving at a glacial pace. Every creak of the floorboards from upstairs sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. When it was done, he had a perfect clone of her digital life. The next night, he began to excavate. He started with her emails, searching for the name of the divorce attorney, Marcus Thorne. He found them. A chain of correspondence going back 4 months. In one, Renata wrote, "He is completely oblivious. Thinks our biggest financial concern is the car insurance payment. This will be a clean break. He won't know what hit him." Elijah's hands clenched into fists on his desk. Oblivious. That's what he was to her. A simple, predictable problem to be managed. He printed the email, his cheap $150 HP printer whirring in the silence. It became the first page in a binder he labeled simply Project Nightingale. The escalating betrayal came in waves, each one more sickening than the last. He found the hidden partner. It wasn't a secret lover in the traditional sense, or at least not yet. It was something far more calculated. The partner was Daniel Croft, a senior partner at her law firm, the man she constantly praised as her mentor. Elijah found emails between them discussing the exit strategy. Daniel was advising her on how to liquidate the assets without raising red flags. He'd helped her set up the Shell LLC. In one message, Daniel wrote, "Once you're clear of him, the path to full partnership will be wide open, and the penthouse will have a great view of the fireworks on the 4th of July." It wasn't just about leaving him. It was a corporate-level conspiracy to defraud him, orchestrated by her boss, the man whose firm Christmas party they had attended just last year, where Daniel had clapped Elijah on the back and told him, "You're a lucky man. Renata is a superstar." The cruelty was in the mundane details. He cross-referenced her credit card statements, the ones she kept hidden, with their shared calendar. A charge for $4,500 at a luxury spa in the Poconos corresponded to a weekend she'd claimed she was at a mandatory legal retreat. A $2,400 Burberry dress was purchased on the same day she told him they couldn't afford to get the central air conditioning fixed, forcing them to sweat through a brutal Philly summer with window units. One scene played over and over in his mind. It was from 2 months ago. They were sitting at the kitchen table paying bills. He was staring at a notice from Cora's school about a field trip. It cost $50. "I don't know, Renata," he had said, rubbing his temples. "Things are tight this month. The property taxes went up." She had sighed, a long, theatrical sound of exasperation. She'd reached across the table and placed her hand on his. Her skin was soft, her nails perfectly manicured, A $90 expense he now knew she paid for in cash. I know, Eli. I know it's hard. We just have to be patient. Once I make full partner, all of this will be a memory. We just have to scrimp and save for a little while longer. He had believed her. He had felt a surge of love for her, for their shared struggle. Now he knew that on that very day, she had transferred $75,000 from their retirement account into R Ventures Global. Her hand on his wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was the sleight of hand of a magician, distracting the audience while the trick was being performed. He printed out the bank statement from that day and placed it in the binder right next to a photo of them at that table. The juxtaposition was sickening. He had to act normal. That was the hardest part. The next Saturday, she announced she was going out for brunch with the girls from work. He knew she was meeting Daniel Croft. He'd seen the reservation confirmation in her deleted emails. Okay, have fun, he said, forcing a smile as he helped Cora with a Lego castle on the living room floor. Don't spend too much. Renata laughed, a sound that now sounded brittle and false. Please, Eli. We're just going to that little diner on 13th Street. I'm not made of money. She leaned down and kissed him, her lips brushing his cheek. You worry too much. It's why I love you. He watched her walk out the door, dressed in a silk blouse that cost more than his monthly car payment for his 2012 Toyota Camry. He felt nothing. The part of him that would have felt jealousy or hurt had been cauterized, burned away by the cold fire of her betrayal. All that was left was the mission. He waited 10 minutes, then packed Cora into the car. Where are we going, Daddy? Cora asked from the back seat. We're going on a little adventure, he said, to a place called a bank. He drove to the branch of the private wealth management firm listed on the portal. He didn't go inside. He just parked across the street. At 1:32 p.m., he saw them. Renata and Daniel Croft exiting the bank, laughing. Daniel put his hand on the small of her back. They didn't go to a diner. They got into Daniel's car, a gleaming white BMW 7 Series, a vehicle that cost a minimum of $87,000. Elijah took out his phone and took a time-stamped photo. The quality was grainy, but the image was clear. Clear enough for a legal exhibit. He saved the photo, drove home, and ordered a pizza for him and Cora. As they ate, he felt a grim sense of satisfaction. She thought he was a simple man. She was about to find out how complex simple men could be when pushed too far. The most difficult part of playing dumb was the constant grinding tension of everyday conversations. Each lie she told was a scene he had to act in, a script he had to follow while the truth screamed in his mind. One evening, about a week after the discovery, she came home late, looking exhausted but exhilarated. She dropped her $1,800 leather briefcase on the floor and slumped onto the sofa. Tough day? Elijah asked, handing her a glass of wine. He was feigning normalcy, pretending to be the supportive husband. Unbelievable, she said, taking a large sip. Daniel is putting me on the Henderson acquisition. It's a $90 million deal. If I land this, the partnership is practically guaranteed. She looked at him, her eyes shining with ambition. This is it, Eli. This is what we've been working for. We. The word hung in the air between them, thick with unspoken irony. He wanted to scream. He wanted to hold up the printouts of her secret bank account and ask her if the Henderson acquisition was funding R Ventures Global. Instead, he just nodded. That's great, Renata. Really great, I'm proud of you. I know, she said, and her condescension was a physical thing, a casual pat on his head. It'll all be worth it. No more worrying about the mortgage on this old house. No more driving that clunker of yours. She gestured vaguely around their living room, at the worn furniture, the framed photos of Cora, the life they had built. Her expression was one of faint disgust, as if she were already seeing it all in her rearview mirror. He had to get out of the room. "I'm going to go check on Cora," he said, his voice tight. He walked upstairs, his heart pounding a dull, angry rhythm against his ribs. He stood in the doorway of his daughter's room, watching her sleep, her chest rising and falling in the soft glow of her nightlight. This was real. The worn armchair in the corner, the mountain of stuffed animals, the scent of lavender from her bath. The world Renata was building, a world of glass towers and million-dollar views, was a phantom. A sterile, empty illusion bought with lies. A few days later, she approached him with a stack of papers. "Hey, honey, I need you to sign something." His entire body went on high alert. He calmly took the documents from her hand. It was an application for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $75,000. "What's this for?" he asked, keeping his tone carefully neutral. He scanned the fine print. The money was to be deposited into their joint checking account. He knew with absolute certainty that it would be immediately transferred to R Ventures Global from there. She was trying to extract the last bit of value from their shared life before she detonated it. "It's for the house," she said smoothly, not missing a beat. "The roof needs work, and I was thinking we could finally remodel the kitchen. You've wanted to do that for years. It's an investment in our future." It was a brilliant lie. It was tailored to him, to his desires, to his love for this house. The old Elijah would have been thrilled. The old Elijah would have signed without a second thought. The new Elijah folded the papers neatly and set them on the counter. "I don't know, Renata. Taking on more debt right now makes me nervous. Let me think about it. I want to read through all this myself." He saw a flicker of annoyance in her eyes, quickly suppressed. "Of course," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Take your time. It's a big decision." She thought he was just being cautious, predictable. She had no idea he was stalling for time, adding this very document to his growing collection of evidence. Her mistake was thinking he was playing checkers. He was playing chess, and his board was much, much larger than hers. 2 days later, Elijah took a personal day from work. He told Renata he had a dentist appointment. His real appointment was at 10 a.m. on the 35th floor of a skyscraper on Market Street, in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. The name on the door was Sharma and Associates. He was met by Anya Sharma, a sharp, impeccably dressed black woman in her early 50s with a reputation for being a brilliant but ruthless litigator. Her office was minimalist and modern, dominated by a large mahogany desk. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Mr. Howard," she said, her voice calm and direct. "You said on the phone you had a complex marital financial situation. My rate is $850 an hour. Please, begin." Elijah opened his worn leather satchel, the same one he took to construction sites, and pulled out the binder. "Project Nightingale," he said, placing it on her desk. It was now 3 inches thick. Anya raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She opened it to the first page. The printed email from Renata to her attorney. He is completely oblivious. For the next hour, Elijah walked her through it. He was no longer a husband. He was a forensic analyst presenting his findings. He spoke in a low, steady voice, devoid of emotion. He showed her the flowcharts he'd made, tracing the money from their joint accounts to the Shell LLC. He presented the timeline of asset liquidation, cross-referenced with Renata's deceitful conversations. He showed her the property prospectus for the penthouse, the retainer with Marcus Thorne, the time-stamped photo of Renata and Daniel Croft leaving the private bank. He had organized everything into tabbed sections: financial malfeasance, conspiracy and collusion, perjury of marital contract, evidence log. Each piece of evidence was cataloged, dated, and annotated with a brief explanation of its significance. Anya Sharma was silent for a long time after he finished. She slowly turned the pages of the binder, her expression unreadable. She stopped on the photo of him and Renata at the kitchen table, the one taken on the day she'd placated him while stealing their retirement money. She looked from the photo to Elijah. Finally, she closed the binder and looked him directly in the eye. "Mr. Howard," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice, "in 25 years of practicing law, I have never seen a client come to an initial consultation this prepared. This isn't a case file. This is a kill shot." Elijah felt a small, grim tremor of validation. "What are my options?" "Your options are numerous," she said, leaning forward. "We could file for divorce immediately and use this to gain leverage in settlement negotiations. We could sue her for fraud. But there's another layer here. Her accomplice, Daniel Croft, is a senior partner at her firm. She used her position and his guidance to commit this fraud. This isn't just a marital issue anymore. This is a professional ethics violation of the highest order." Anya tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the binder. "Your wife and her mentor used company time and resources to conspire to defraud you. They created a massive conflict of interest and a huge liability for their firm. The other partners, they will not be pleased to learn about this." A plan began to form in the cold, clear space of Elijah's mind. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge was messy. This was about consequences. It was about accountability. He was a structural engineer. When a part of a structure is fundamentally compromised, you don't just patch it. You isolate it, remove it, and rebuild on a sound foundation. "What I want," Elijah said, his voice hard as steel, "is to secure my daughter's future. I want every single dollar she stole returned to the marital estate. I want this house free and clear. And I want her to understand that actions have consequences." Anya Sharma smiled, a thin, sharp smile. "I think we can arrange that," she said. "We won't just file for divorce. We're going to orchestrate a strategic detonation. We will prepare 3 identical packets containing this evidence. One for your wife's attorney, Marcus Thorne. One for the managing partner of her law firm. And one sent via certified courier to the State Bar's Ethics Committee." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "And we will ensure they are all delivered at precisely the same time." For the next week, Elijah and Anya's team worked in secret. They drafted the legal filings. They notarized affidavits. They made 3 perfect copies of the Project Nightingale binder, each one a meticulously crafted bomb. Elijah felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were planning a project for a client. He was simply following a procedure, executing a plan based on the evidence. The emotional storm had passed. All that remained was the eerie, silent calm before the strike. What do you think is the most devastating piece of evidence Elijah found? The financial fraud? The emails with her boss? Or the lies she told to his face? Let us know your thoughts below. The strike was scheduled for Tuesday, November 14th at 9:05 a.m. It was a day like any other. The sky over Philadelphia was a flat, unforgiving gray. Rain threatened, clinging to the air with a damp chill. At 7:15 a.m., Renata breezed through the kitchen, a vision in a charcoal gray suit that cost $3,100. "Big day," she announced, grabbing the coffee Elijah had already poured for her. "Final presentation on the Henderson deal. Wish me luck." She gave him the same quick, cool kiss on the cheek. "Good luck," Elijah said. His heart was a steady, slow drum. He watched her walk out the door, get into her leased Audi A4, a $42,000 car whose payments were a constant source of manufactured arguments, and drive away. He had already packed Cora's lunch and put her on the school bus. The house was quiet. At 8:30 a.m., he made a call to Anya Sharma. "All systems are go," he said. "The couriers are in position," she replied. "Good luck, Mr. Howard." Elijah sat at his kitchen table, the same one where his world had fallen apart, and waited. He tracked the packages online. 3 identical tracking numbers. At 9:01 a.m., the first one was marked Delivered, signed for by receptionist, at the offices of Marcus Thorne. At 9:03 a.m., the second was delivered to the managing partner of Renata's firm, a man named Lawrence Adler. At 9:04 a.m., the third was signed for at the State Bar Association. He imagined the scene. Renata standing confidently in a glass-walled conference room on the 45th floor, presenting her findings on the Henderson acquisition. She would be articulate, brilliant, the rising star. Then Lawrence Adler's assistant would knock softly on the door and hand him a thick FedEx envelope. He would open it, his expression shifting from curiosity to confusion, then to cold, hard fury as he saw the evidence of a massive conspiracy happening right under his nose, orchestrated by one of his senior partners and his protege. Elijah's phone rang at 9:27 a.m. It was a blocked number. He let it go to voicemail. A second later, a text came through. It was from Renata. "Eli, what is this? Call me now." He ignored it. He poured himself a cup of coffee, his hand perfectly steady. He had spent weeks living in her storm. Now she would live in his silence. Another text, 5 minutes later. "Lawrence Adler just pulled me and Daniel out of the Henderson meeting. He has documents. What did you do?" The voicemails began. The first was clipped, angry. "Elijah, I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but you need to call me. My career is on the line here. You have no idea what you've done." The second voicemail, 20 minutes after that, was different. The anger was gone, replaced by a rising panic. "Okay, look, I was going to tell you. Things have been complicated. We can talk about this. Please, Eli. Just call me back. Don't destroy everything." He sat and listened to her carefully constructed world collapsing in real time, one message at a time. He felt a profound sense of emptiness. There was no triumph, no joy. There was only the quiet, grim finality of a necessary demolition. The compromise structure was coming down. The third voicemail arrived an hour later. Her voice was barely a whisper, ragged with disbelief. "They're asking for my resignation, and Daniel's, the partners. They know everything. The LLC, the penthouse, everything. My keycard doesn't work anymore. They're having security escort me out of the building." There was a long pause, filled with the sound of a shuddering breath. "How could you?" He deleted the message. He looked at the clock. It was 10:45 a.m. Cora would be in the middle of her math lesson. He thought about what he would make for dinner. Maybe her favorite, baked chicken and macaroni and cheese. He needed to go to the grocery store. Life had to go on. The final voicemail came in the early afternoon. It was just the sound of her weeping, a raw, broken sound that went on for nearly a minute before the machine cut it off. He listened to the entire thing, his face impassive. He felt a flicker of the man he used to be, a ghost of pity for the woman he had loved. But it was just a ghost. The woman he had loved would never have done this. The woman who left that message was a stranger. He deleted the voicemail and began to write a grocery list. The consequences cascaded with brutal, systematic efficiency. It was exactly as Anya Sharma had predicted. The law firm, faced with a massive ethics scandal and potential liability, acted swiftly and without mercy to cauterize the wound. First, Renata was terminated, effective immediately. She wasn't just asked to resign, she was fired for cause, for gross professional misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty. Her $280,000 annual salary vanished overnight. Her path to partnership, the ambition that had driven her for a decade, was permanently obliterated. She was escorted from the building with a small cardboard box containing the contents of her desk, a public humiliation in front of the colleagues she had worked so hard to impress. Second, Daniel Croft, the senior partner and her co-conspirator, was also fired. The firm's managing partners saw his actions not just as a betrayal of a client's spouse, but as a betrayal of the firm itself. He had exposed them to immense legal and financial risk. He lost his 7-figure income, his corner office, and his 30-year career. News of his dismissal for an unspecified ethics violation quietly circulated through the Philadelphia legal community, effectively blacklisting him. Third, the court acted on Anya's emergency filing. A judge issued an immediate injunction, freezing all assets within the R Ventures Global LLC account. The entire $334,781.22 was placed under court control, to be properly adjudicated as part of the marital estate. The secret fund she had spent months building was gone in the stroke of a pen. Fourth, the pending $150,000 down payment on the Society Hill penthouse was blocked. The deal collapsed. Because the contract was contingent on funds that were now proven to be fraudulently obtained, Renata and Daniel lost their initial $25,000 earnest money deposit. The dream of a new life in a glass tower overlooking the city evaporated. Fifth, her high-powered divorce attorney, Marcus Thorne, dropped her as a client. Upon receiving Elijah's evidence packet, he immediately filed a motion to withdraw, citing that his client had fundamentally misrepresented her financial standing and the source of her retainer. Renata was left with no legal representation, her reputation in tatters. Sixth, the personal fallout was just as swift. Unable to afford the lease on her Audi A4, she had to return it to the dealership, paying a hefty penalty. Without an income, she couldn't afford their Germantown row house, and with Elijah filing for exclusive possession, she was forced to move out. She found a small, one-bedroom apartment in a run-down building in South Philly, paying $1,200 a month, a stark contrast to the luxury she had been planning. The Armani suits and Burberry dresses were useless now, relics from a life that no longer existed. Elijah, meanwhile, remained in the house with Cora. He changed the locks. He methodically went through the house and packed up all of Renata's belongings into boxes. He did it without anger, with the quiet efficiency of a man clearing away rubble after a storm. He was not destroying her life. He was simply presenting her with the bill for the choices she had made. The universe, he was learning, had its own form of structural engineering, and it did not tolerate faulty foundations. 2 years passed. The rain of that November morning had long since given way to sunlight. The divorce was finalized cleanly and quickly. Faced with the mountain of irrefutable evidence, Renata had no choice but to agree to Elijah's terms. The court awarded him the house, full custody of Cora, and 65% of the total marital assets, including the entirety of the recovered $334,000, as punitive damages for Renata's financial malfeasance. Life in the Germantown row house settled into a new, quieter rhythm. The silence left by Renata's absence was soon filled with Cora's laughter, the sound of her practicing the violin, and the chatter of her friends during sleepovers. The house felt lighter, cleaner. Elijah had finally fixed the central air conditioning, a $4,500 expense he could now comfortably afford. He didn't change much else. He kept his job, still making his modest $78,000 a year. He still drove his old Toyota Camry, which now had over 187,000 miles on it. He found he didn't need a penthouse view or expensive cars. His wealth was measured in different terms now. It was in the stability he provided for his daughter, in the peace of his own home, in the integrity of his own character. With a small portion of the recovered money, he started a foundation. He called it the Keystone Mentorship Program. He partnered with local high schools in underserved Philadelphia neighborhoods to mentor young, aspiring black engineers. Twice a month, he would host workshops in a community center, teaching them the basics of drafting, physics, and structural analysis. He helped them with college applications and scholarship essays. He saw his own quiet passion reflected in their eager eyes. He wasn't just building bridges and buildings anymore, he was helping to build futures. It was the most satisfying work he had ever done. One Saturday afternoon, he was sitting on the back porch, watching Cora, now a bright and confident 11-year-old, tend to a small vegetable garden they had planted together. The garden was thriving. Tomato vines climbed up their stakes, and green peppers grew plump in the sun. It was a testament to patience, to care, to nurturing something real and watching it grow. Cora came over to him, her hands smudged with dirt. She was holding a piece of paper, folded carefully. "I made this for you, Daddy," she said. He unfolded it. It was a drawing, done in her favorite brown and black crayons. It depicted two figures standing in front of their brick row house. One was a tall man with short, neat hair. The other was a smaller girl with a big smile, her hair a celebration of bouncy coils with colorful beads at the end. At the bottom, in her careful printing, she had written, "My dad, the strongest builder in the world. He can fix anything." Tears welled in Elijah's eyes. He pulled his daughter into a tight hug, burying his face in her hair. This was the structure that would never fail. This was the foundation that could withstand any storm. True wealth is not a number in a secret bank account. It is not a penthouse view or a luxury car. True wealth is the foundation you build within yourself, a foundation of integrity, honesty, and character. It's the structures of love and trust you build in the lives of others, the kind that can't be bought or liquidated, but can only be earned, day by day, choice by choice. It's about building things that are meant to last. What do you believe is the truest measure of a person's wealth? Let us share our thoughts and inspire each other in the comments below.